The storage alert came through at 11:48 on a Sunday night. I had set up the network-attached storage in our hallway closet 2 years earlier. She kept running out of space on her phone and refused to pay for cloud upgrades. The system backed up every device connected to our home, Wi-Fi automatically, her phone, my phone, both laptops, the tablet she used for work, silent, continuous, every 6 hours. When I set it up, she handed me her phone and told me to handle the configuration. She did not want to deal with the technical side. I installed a third-party mobile backup application on her device to give the storage deeper access to her camera roll and app data. That application had a setting I enabled during setup and then stopped thinking about. It archived the recently deleted album on the phone before the 30-day erasure window closed, saving a mirrored copy to the NAS each cycle. She knew the NAS existed. She did not know what the backup application was capturing. The alert said the primary drive was at 94% capacity. Something had dumped a significant amount of new data recently. I opened the management interface on my laptop to find the source. Her phone backup had grown by 34 gigabytes in the past 90 days. I clicked the folder tree to see where the size was coming from. Most of it was sitting in a subfolder labeled Recently Deleted, Archived Cache. She had been deleting content from her phone on a regular basis. The application had been saving everything she deleted before it was permanently gone. I sat in the hallway closet with my laptop on my knees. I did not move. There were 1,100 files in the archived cache folder. The oldest entries had timestamps going back 9 months. I opened a photo at random about 7 months prior. It was taken inside a restaurant I had never been to. She was on the left side of the frame. A man I had seen once before was on the right. I met him briefly at a professional mixer her company hosted the previous spring. He had been introduced to me as a regional vendor her events team used for large format production work. We shook hands. He told me she was one of the best coordinators he had worked with. I thanked him for the compliment on her behalf and moved on to the next conversation. 14 months later, I was looking at him in a photo she had deleted from her phone and believed it was gone. I closed the laptop. I did not go through anything else that night. What I did was copy the entire archived cache folder to an encrypted external drive, put it in a case, and lock it in the storage box in my truck. Then I went inside and went to bed. She was already asleep. I lay next to her in the dark and ran through what I knew versus what I suspected. Those are two different things, and I needed to be precise about which was which. What I knew, 1,100 deleted files, one photo, one face. What I suspected, everything else. I was not going to act on suspicion. I ran through every practical question that needed an answer before I did anything. Whether there was more in those files, whether the financial picture was as clean as I assumed it was, whether I had the full picture or just a corner of it. Those questions had answers. I just had to be patient enough to find them before I moved. What I knew for certain was this: the moment I reacted without a complete picture, I lost control of the timeline. She would know I knew. She would move money, delete accounts, retain an attorney before I had a single document in order. The only leverage I would ever have was the leverage I built before she understood the situation. That meant I had one job for however long it took: act normal, work the data, do not tip my hand. I work as an operations coordinator for an industrial supply company. My job is to track inventory movement, manage logistics across 3 regional warehouses, and solve problems before they become losses. The work requires patience and precision, an ability to look at a situation without letting what you want to be true override what the data actually shows. That training was useful over the next 6 days. I went through the full cache folder on the second night. After she left for a venue walkthrough she had mentioned the week before, I took notes in a spreadsheet: date, file type, embedded metadata, location data from the GPS coordinates, the phone attached to every photo it captured. She did not know her phone embedded location data in photo files. Most people do not think about that. The coordinates were in the file metadata for every photo taken with location services enabled. I ran each set of coordinates through a mapping application. The photos of him, there were 206 of them across the 9-month span, had been taken at 28 distinct locations. 5 of those locations were in cities she had traveled to for what she described to me as regional planning conferences. The other 23 were within 80 miles of our house: restaurants, 2 different hotels, a parking structure near a concert venue, the exterior of a building I could not immediately identify from the coordinates alone. I noted every address. Then I pulled our joint credit card statements for the past 9 months and went through them line by line. 3 of the out-of-town trips in the photo metadata matched charges on our joint card, fuel stops in the correct cities, meals at restaurants in those areas, 1 hotel booking. She had put those charges on our card. She had been billing our joint account for trips she was taking with him. The total across those 3 trips came to $890. I wrote the number down and kept going. She also had a retailer card, a store account she had opened in her name as an authorized line, tied to our joint account. The balance reported to both our credit profiles. I had not looked at that card in months. She managed the household accounts. That had been her domain since the first year of our marriage. The retailer card showed 9 charges over 6 months that did not match any household purchases: 2 hotel stays, 4 restaurant transactions, a rideshare account charge, 2 charges at a specialty shop in a neighborhood she had never mentioned visiting. That card added $2,410 to the total. Combined with the joint card charges, the documented figure was $3,300. I added a column to my spreadsheet and labeled it Community Funds, Confirmed. I called a family law attorney on the 4th day. I had done enough research to know I needed someone who practiced specifically in Texas family law. Texas operates under community property rules, and the financial piece of what I had found was going to matter as much as the photographs. The attorney I found had been handling Texas divorces for 18 years. I brought a printed copy of the spreadsheet, the GPS coordinate log, the credit card statements with the relevant charges highlighted, and the external drive. She reviewed the printed materials first, without touching the drive. When she finished, she set the papers down and looked at me. The photographs and the location data established the affair, she said. The credit card documentation establishes something additional. She used a legal term, something about dissipation of marital assets. She explained that in Texas, when one spouse uses community funds to finance an extramarital relationship, the court can consider that waste in the property division analysis. She said the $3,300 was the floor, what was visible on accounts I had access to. She said there could be more. There almost always was. She told me to hire a private investigator before filing anything, not for photographs. I had 206 of those. What she wanted was a full financial picture of the relationship, how it was being funded, what account she was using, whether any additional community funds were involved. She said, walk in with a complete picture, and the other side has nowhere to go. The investigator I hired came, recommended through my attorney's office. His background was corporate fraud investigation before he moved into domestic cases. That background showed how he worked. He was not interested in surveillance photographs. He wanted financial records, spending patterns, and documentation of any transactions I had not yet identified. He worked for 16 days. His report came back 41 pages. What he had found was a paper trail leading to a bank neither of us had ever used together. He had observed her entering a branch on 2 separate occasions. documented both visits, and flagged the institution to my attorney. My attorney issued a targeted subpoena to that specific bank. The subpoena came back with a personal debit card in her name, opened 14 months earlier on an account I had never known existed. The card had been in use for 14 months. The charges on it totaled $5,100 across that period. More hotel stays, meals, 2 weekend trips to cities that matched locations in the photo metadata I had documented. She had been running a completely separate spending stream for over a year. The report also documented the overlap. 3 of the hotel charges on the private debit card fell on the same dates as the out-of-town conference trips she had described to me. She had not been lying about the destinations. She had been lying about who was there. Her salary was community property under Texas law. Money transferred from a community property salary into a private account used to finance an affair was, in my attorney's words when I brought her the report, exactly the kind of documented waste that changes a property division outcome. She was served at her office on a Friday afternoon at 2:09. My attorney texted me the confirmation while I was at the warehouse. I read the message and finished the inventory reconciliation I had been working on for the past hour. Her first call came at 2:23. I let it ring. She called again at 2:31, 2:44, and 3 more times before 4 o'clock. The text began around 2:45. The first one said, "What is this? Call me." The second said, "I'm leaving work right now. Call me before I get home." The third said, "Please, what is going on? Why won't you answer me?" I read all of them and responded to none of them. My apartment, which I had leased and moved into 10 days before the filing, was 12 minutes from the warehouse. She had not known I was looking. That was the only advantage I needed. I had been moving my things out gradually for 3 weeks before the papers were filed. A bag here, a box there, things she would not notice missing because she rarely paid attention to what was mine specifically versus what was ours. Documents, financial records, tools I had owned before the marriage, personal items that had no business being left behind. By the time she was served, the house contained nothing irreplaceable that belonged to me. The surprising thing was, she found my apartment, I don't know how. I am thinking because of the phone. She was still listed as an account holder on the carrier plan. The plan included a family location feature she had access to through the carrier's app. I had not removed her from the plan yet. That was the one detail I had not covered. She knocked for 6 minutes. I did not open the door. She sat down in the hallway outside my apartment for 40 minutes. I could see the shadow under the door. I did not call building management. Any incident on record before the divorce was finalized gave her attorney something to work with. I was not going to hand them that. Then she left. She texted me from the parking lot. "I know you're in there. I just need you to hear me out. That's all." I turned my phone off and went to sleep. Her attorney filed a response within 8 days. The response included a request for spousal maintenance, Texas's version of alimony, citing the 8-year marriage, the income differential between us, and what her attorney described as her reasonable expectation of continued financial support. The initial figure they requested was substantial. My attorney told me not to react to the number. She said they open high because they expect to negotiate down. She said they have not seen our full evidence package yet. The discovery process required both parties to submit complete financial disclosures. When my attorney delivered our package, the GPS metadata analysis, the investigator's 41-page report, the complete breakdown of over $8,000 in documented marital waste across 14 months, the separate debit card her attorney had not known about, her attorney requested a 5-day extension before responding. That extension told me everything about how the other side had just recalibrated. 5 days of silence from an attorney who had filed a spousal maintenance. demand 8 days after service means one thing: they were reading a document they had not expected to exist. When they came back, the spousal maintenance request had been cut by 70%. My attorney rejected the revised figure. She submitted a formal brief citing the dissipation finding and the Texas Family Code provisions governing fault in dissolution proceedings. Her language in the brief was specific: documented marital waste of community assets, sustained pattern of concealment, use of funds derived from community property income to finance an extramarital relationship spanning 14 months. The spousal maintenance request was withdrawn within 48 hours. No revised counterproposal. The property division negotiation ran for 7 weeks. The house was a central asset. We had built 6 years of equity into it, and neither side wanted to walk away from that number. Her attorney's opening position was a default 50-50 split of net equity. My attorney's counterposition was that the $8,400 in documented marital waste represented a direct reduction of the community estate and should be factored into the split accordingly. The argument was not that adultery automatically shifts property division in Texas. It does not work that way mechanically. The argument was that the court had discretion to consider the financial impact of one spouse's conduct on the marital estate. The documented waste gave the court a specific, verifiable number to work with. That distinction mattered. A fault argument based on photographs alone is subjective. A court can weigh it or set it aside, depending on how sympathetic the other party appears. A fault argument anchored to $8,400 in traceable transactions across 14 months is a math problem. Courts understand math problems. Her attorney tried to push back on the separate debit card charges, arguing that funds in her personal checking account were still hers in a practical sense, even if technically community property. My attorney returned with the Texas Family Code definition of community property and 4 case citations. That argument ended. The settlement on the house came in above 50-50 in my favor. The margin was meaningful. I will leave the specific figure out of this. The investigator's fee paid for itself many times over. The joint investment account was split equally. My attorney advised that fighting harder there would extend the timeline without a proportionate gain. The retirement account I had opened before the marriage was a premarital asset. Her attorney raised it once in the early weeks. My attorney submitted the account opening date, the original contribution records, and a clear timeline showing no community funds had ever been deposited. That issue did not come up again. The retailer card balance, the authorized line tied to our joint account, carrying $2,410 of charges she had run up, was assigned entirely to her in the settlement. She had opened it. She had used it. She paid it. Her attorney did not argue the point. The divorce was finalized without a courtroom. My attorney called me at 4:11 on the afternoon it closed. She said, "It's done." I was at the warehouse, end of shift. I thanked her, asked if there was anything remaining on her end, confirmed there was not, and ended the call. Then I finished what I was doing, drove to my apartment, and made dinner. The apartment was small and quiet and entirely mine. I had stopped thinking of it as temporary somewhere around week 3. Well, I found out that the man from the photographs had gone through his own proceedings. His wife had filed shortly after mine did. I have no information about how that resolved. I did not look. That outcome was not connected to anything I had done. It was a consequence of choices made in that household long before I was aware of any of it. The NOS is still an apartment now. I brought it when I moved. I upgraded the drive capacity last month and reconfigured the backup schedule. Everything syncs every 4 hours, recently deleted archive included. Not because of what happened, because that is the correct way to run a backup system. She had been deleting content from her phone for 9 months before that Sunday night alert. She believed the files were gone because she had pressed delete. Delete is not gone. Delete is just a folder with a different name, waiting for the right person to look at the right time. I was 6 months late looking. The result would have been the same either way. It just would have cost her less of what she had built if I had looked sooner. That is not my problem to carry.